Well, hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we have a viewer request on binding a DX5 radio with a large-scale Arrma vehicle. Well, before we get too much further, and as always, I would like to take a second and just say thank you very much for stopping in and taking a look at another one of my videos. And I really do hope that this benefits you in some way. If it does, do please consider giving me a thumbs up and a subscription. That would really help me out. Now, with all that out of the way, we'll get right to the video here. So we had a viewer reach out to me in the comments and ask for instructions on how to bind a DX5 Pro radio with one of the large-scale Arrma vehicles. I believe he asked for Creighton. Unfortunately, buddy, the only thing I can get for you is an Outcast. My buddy Marcus actually brought this to me. Let me borrow it. And I have a DX5R radio. Now, the DX5R radio is the same radio as the DX5 Pro. The DX5 Pro will just have some more programmable features and a faster frame rate, but all of the basic stuff is really all that you'll need in order to bind up this transmitter to the large-scale vehicles. Now, I have taken some time and taken the screws out of the ESC here, as well as out of the cover that's under the ESC, so we can expose that here. Now, just inside the receiver box, there is the Spektrum 6-channel receiver. I don't know how well you can see that on the video here. There's a button on the receiver. If you listen close, you might hear it in my microphone. That button is the bind button. So we're going to be using that button in order to put the receiver into bind mode. Now, once the receiver's into bind mode, we'll need to do a calibration on that receiver. So I'll go through all those steps so that you can see how that works. Our next step, of course, is to power on the transmitter so that the transmitter will, of course, be on and ready to go. Now, looking close at the screen here, you can see that this is going to come up with kind of a generic menu here. Now, pushing the roller in here, let's see if I can do this all together here and still see. Pushing the menu in, you'll scroll down to a model select feature. And pushing the button in on the model select will let you get in here and select your model. So the very first thing that you'll want to do is, of course, set up a new model so that you're not writing over an existing one. So you'll get down to add new model here. And of course, you'll want to create that new model. Now, in creating the new model, you can go through and actually set this up so that it will program, or rather you can name it whatever you want to as far as a model name goes. For the purpose of this video, I won't go through all of that because that's actually fairly easy within the transmitter itself. Now, our next step is to roll this roller down to the feature that says bind. And I'm trying really hard to make sure that you can see this screen here. And I can see it as well. So you can see here, we're set up on the bind button. Now, pushing the bind in, you'll get some instructions on the transmitter here. And those instructions will tell you to put the receiver into bind mode first, and then put the transmitter into bind mode. So I'm going to roll this down to where bind is highlighted so that we're ready to go ahead and bind this up. Now, our next step, of course, is to plug in the ESC so that this will be powered up. And with these larger vehicles, you'll always be aware that they'll always arc and pop when you plug them in. That is the capacitors charging up on the ESC itself. Then we will hold down this bind button on the receiver and go ahead and power up the system. Now, one thing to note is anytime you power up the Spektrum ESC, you're going to get beeps out of the system. It's counting the number of cells. So as a pro tip, always count along with the speed controller. Make sure that it's reading the voltage that you're intending to be using. Now, with that running, I don't know if you can see the receiver just in the inside here blinking. So that's indicating that it is in bind mode. And we'll come over to our transmitter here and push in the roller since we've already got it prepared for bind. And we'll give it a few minutes, and the radio will reset. And the light on the receiver will go solid color. Now, the very first thing we'll do, we'll calibrate that AVC like I mentioned before. We will pull the trigger full, push the trigger brake, full left, then full right, and the receiver will come back on. Now, one thing to note is that we will need to reverse the steering direction here, because when we turned to the left, the vehicle's actually rotating right. So we'll fix that in a second. But the first thing we'll want to do is we'll want to give this a little bit of a test pull to make sure that the ESC is, of course, on, but also to check the correction of our AVC. So when we're sliding this way, we want that steering to be correcting in the right direction, which means that the AVC is actually calibrated in here, but we do need to flip the direction of the servo reverse switch. So that's fairly simple. We're going to push in the roller, and we're going to go down to servo setup. I don't know if you can see on the camera there, servo setup. And then we're going to roll down to where the word travel is written on that transmitter there. We'll push in the roller, and now we can roll down, or up rather, to reverse. So once we're set up in reverse, we can push the roller in and roll down to the steering and flip this from normal, push in the roller, flip that to I stand corrected. You just have to push in the roller. I thought you had to roll it. Now you can see it's gone from normal to reverse. And in checking the steering, turning to the left, the vehicle is turning left. So we've got that set up correctly. And once again, we'll want to double check the AVC. So pull the trigger and make sure that we are correcting in the right direction. So we are correcting in the correct direction now. Sometimes you'll find yourself having to do the recalibration once again on the AVC. And if you find that your calibration is correcting in the wrong direction, we went left, then right. When you do the recalibration, you'll go right, then left, and that will correct the direction that your AVC is rotating. So that's a really easy way for you to calibrate that AVC. The next step that we'll need to do is we'll need to calibrate the ESC as well. So anytime we change transmitter, we change receiver, we always want to recalibrate that ESC. So we'll power this off, and this is really simple calibration wise. We will hold down the set button and power on the ESC, and we'll wait until it starts to beep. We'll push the button one time to verify neutral position. We'll pull the trigger full and push the button again to verify full throttle. Push the trigger full reverse, push the button again to verify full reverse. The system will come back on, count the number of beeps with it. Now that speed controller is calibrated for the transmitter, so we know that that throttle range is going to be set properly. Now the next step that we'll want to do is we'll want to set the endpoints on the transmitter itself, and we can once again go back through our menus on the transmitter here. So we can roll back up to the list on the transmitter itself. And we want to roll down to servo setup once again. And you see it's going to default to travel. Now what the travel is going to do is that's going to let you set your travel of your steering to full extension that the truck will allow. You're always going to have more throw in the steering servo than you will in the vehicle itself. So you want to set that travel so that it doesn't overextend that servo. That's a good way to burn up servos. So an easy way to set that up is actually go ahead and turn the vehicle here. And we want to turn the steering to one side. First thing we'll do is we'll go back to our transmitter here, and we'll roll down to where the steering is set. You see it's set 100 and 100. If you push in the roller on that steering, it will begin to blink on your setting that you're turning. If you turn right or turn left, it will highlight whatever direction you've rotated. So you can set those endpoints separate of each other. So you can set it per the vehicle, not per the radio itself. So a good way to check here is to go ahead and steer full. Lift up your vehicle so that your steering goes to full lock, and slowly creep up on your travel, increasing that travel to try and max out the travel of your vehicle. And as you start to come back, you'll notice I'm coming back on the steering a little, but on the steering wheel rather, but the vehicle is not immediately responding to that input. So we want to run that endpoint down so that it will set the endpoint properly. So we're going to go full lock again. We're going to lift up the vehicle and slowly creep down on this until we see response out of this tire. And we'll check it periodically. So again, coming down and creeping down. And we've reached this threshold now where as soon as we let go of the steering, it's responding. So now we'll go do the other side. Same kind of trick here. So our vehicle is responding to that input. So we'll creep up on the travel and check it again. And we want to come down just a little bit. And that's it as far as setting up the steer and travel. And one thing to note is when you look at the transmitter, they're not even, and they're not supposed to be even. So when you trim the vehicle to one side or the other, it will throw off your endpoints from one direction, one side or the other. So if you go to retrim your vehicle at some point, you really should come back and travel your transmitter so that you're setting that throw up correctly on your steering. Well guys, as we put a wrap on this video, I hope you can see how easy it is to set up a 5-channel radio on the Arrma 5th scale models. And if you did benefit from this video, do please consider giving me a thumbs up and a subscription. Also, don't forget to hit that bell if you want to see the future content. Well, that'll wrap it up for this one, and I hope to see you in the next one.